I am my own person, am Nick. I don't need doctors saying, oh, well, you're autistic with a smattering of ADHD and Asperger's and blah, blah, blah. I don't need that. I don't want that. I don't. But taking courses and seeing, the behind the scenes of that is intriguing to me. And I think that's something that I could maybe look into. So again, I learned that from your podcast, and I thank you.
How are you, man?
I'm great. How about yourself?
Pretty good. This is the first podcast interview I've done with somebody that's a long way from me. You're in the USA.
I am I'm right outside of Orlando, Florida.
Tell me about yourself. What's got you interested to come on the podcast?
I just was fired from my job of 3 years where I was the top sales rep all 3 years. And they fired me because of my neurodiversity. There is no question. The reason they gave for firing me was because I answered Facebook messages during company time when nothing else was going on during that company time.
How long did you work there for?
3 years. And I have multiple top salesman awards. So in the US, multiple states have what's called a right to work state, and they can fire you for any reason they choose. Right. As long as you can't prove they were being racist or sexist, or like if the boss hit on a girl and then they fire them the next day, that's obviously a problem.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah, it's this similar sort of stuff goes over here in the UK. Goes on over in the UK. It's probably some different rights we've got over here to what you've got over there. But I've experienced, because I've just recently taken early retirement. And fundamentally, that was down to basically a toxic workplace, really. Get people that get jealous of other people that do reasonably well at their job, and they want to dominate, and all that sort of thing goes on. So it's interesting with the neurodiversity, because I did a podcast on neurodiversity. I don't know whether you heard.
I listened to it this morning, yes, sir.
What did you think?
I loved it. It's 100% correct. I think the disorder is a problem. I think let me give you a perfect example. I posted in the group that we're in, and, about my experiences and everything, and about how I wanted to, talk with people. And I already had said the only person who responded was somebody who had an issue with what I posted, because I'm not officially diagnosed as autistic and ADHD. So I'm offending people who are officially diagnosed, and it's crazy. People just want to find reasons to be upset about things.
And good luck on getting a diagnosis these days. Certainly in the UK, you can't get a diagnosis. I think, I'm 61 years old. I've kind of come to the conclusion that I've got a bit of neurodiversity simply by having done a course on it. And I've kind of began to understand how I'd struggled growing up, with certain things. It is a broad spectrum, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So you're telling me that you accidentally upset somebody, you didn't intend to upset somebody, but because other people decided that you didn't think you knew what you were talking about, which is rubbish, isn't it, really? Because we all know.
Yeah, it was the opposite. Showed my hand. I showed that I'm capable. I showed that I was intelligent. I showed that I had solutions to the problems that my management, who got hired after me, did not see. And that literally the week before I was fired, my manager taught me something new. I am not an arrogant person. I'm not a person who thinks that I know everything. I'm a person who recognizes how much I don't know. It's the people that think that they know everything that are the problem. Well, and problem is a bad word, but anyway, that's my ADHD going in different circles. So the point is that he taught me something, and I said, that's great. I love that. And I wonder if everybody knows this. So could I do the meeting on Monday? We always do, they rarely do their own meetings. I've been in sales for 20 plus years. The manager does their morning meeting. And you make it something about motivation, or you make it about mechanics. We have scripts, we have rebuttals, we have things we have to do successfully to create a sale. And so he said, yes, fine, do the meeting. So I did the meeting that morning and I asked everybody, what do we do? How do we, you can see that you talked about eye contact. You can see I don't look down the barrel, but, so I did the meeting and I gave the examples and he had 10 reps and take a guess at how many reps knew that's representatives. Take a guess how many representatives, how many employees under his care knew what he trained me, and he wasn't going to train everybody else. Zero. Not one of the reps knew his system that he had that I liked, that I thought was beneficial, but I had to train them on. Yeah, because he trained me and he hadn't trained anybody else. And a good manager would be like, my whole team doesn't know this, because I don't know why he thought people knew it, because he obviously hadn't trained them. And then another meeting I gave was a motivational meeting, and the top rep in the company, who, I was top rep all 3 years, but he came in halfway through the year. So he had catching up to do. Once again, I'll be 100% honest. I would not have been the top rep had I, only come into the company on the second. Or had he been there, more importantly, had he been there the full year. But regardless, he heard my motivational meeting, which I don't even remember what it was. It was a throw. And I posted a motivational quote. Of course, my access has been restricted at this point. I could have my fiance look it up. She still works there, but he was just blown away. He was like so excited and so motivated and everything. And most of our meetings are just, what's your favorite childhood memory? And it's not professional. It's not sales. It's not making anybody better. It's silly.
That sounds like just playing around with icebreakers for a meeting.
Yeah.
All that sort of. So what happened when did you challenge your boss about this, about the fact that he hadn't trained?
I tried. It was too late. My boss I was just floored, because, I, being neurodiverse and being, autistic and blah, 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 whatever label you want to put on it, I have a complete and utter respect for the truth. The truth shall set you free. I honestly believe that. I think people don't have enough real conversations. I think, like you said in your depression podcast, it's so important to discuss these things with people. You have to find the courage to just say, this isn't okay. I need to talk to somebody. And, I had the first real conversation with my mother that I've had in 42 years, and I'm 42 years old. Because of what I was going through at this job, I had self-harm thoughts. I don't want to say bad, language or anything, and I don't want to say anything that'll get demonetized, and that's another thing that's silly. I mean, I get the reasoning behind it, but there should be exceptions, because we shouldn't have to tiptoe around these things. That's just another just divergent path. So you can see that just from talking to me for 5 minutes, I don't need a diagnosis. I am not what people consider normal,
It's normal. Typical is just about a group of people that are kind of communicate in a similar kind of way. I think it was that whole idea I came up on that was talking about the fact that the fact that actually somebody from that speaks a different language. If you were talking to somebody that was speaking Russian, you don't speak Russian, then effectively
I love that.
Then you
that metaphor. Absolutely. I love that metaphor. I made a couple notes and I'm glad you brought that up, because yes, I love that metaphor, and you really touched on autism, because it's just all about accepting people. And one of my things that I want to push, and I'm happy, I don't care who gets credit for it, I don't care what, I just want it for the world. Safe spaces. I don't know if you guys have safe spaces over in the UK, but it's a big thing over here that people want their safe space. And safe spaces are not conducive to the real world. You are preparing yourself for something that doesn't exist. So when you're in your safe space online, you hear everything that you say regurgitated back to you. Either everybody's open-minded, or everybody loves Trump, or everybody, hates these people. We don't need to get into specifics, but you get the idea. So when you're in your safe space, the world is your beliefs. But then as soon as you leave your safe space and you go to a restaurant or you go to a public event or something, and you do something that the public doesn't agree with, somebody's going to call you out on it. And then you're just not going to be prepared to deal with it. So my solution is, instead of having a safe space, recognize people are people. They don't owe you anything. Okay.
Yeah.
You don't owe me anything. You've invited me on your podcast. You could shut it off this second and I would not be, you're the one who makes the rules here. And it's the same thing out there. Everybody has their own set of rules. And if you step on an important rule for somebody, they're going to have an issue. You need to understand that strangers are and that's the benefit. That's where I want to see people get healthy, is understand their autism, neurodivergency, whatever, and be able to deal with it outside of, their loved ones and their family and their friends who say, that's just Nick being Nick. How many times I've heard that in my life? And that hurts too. That hurts for a little bit, but it's better than me, getting called out, etc. But I've gotten better with my stuff. I've kind of sanded my rough edges to a point, believe it or not. But I think we should have safe words with our loved ones. These earbuds will not stay in. I think we should have safe words with our loved ones and our friends and family. And I've done this with my fiance, who I've been with for 8 years, who I credit for my crash course in, like you said, not trying to fix people. People aren't a puzzle that you need to solve. People are, just they have their stuff. They're either damaged or they're damaged from trauma, which literally happens. I don't know how much you know about trauma and what it does to the brain, but I'm recently finding out that from enough trauma, it literally shuts down pathways in your brain that allow you to cope healthily and hear that positive self-talk. And it is literally damage to your brain. And it makes it more difficult for you to, live in society and live inside yourself. You tell yourself you're no good. And I have those thoughts, but then immediately I have a voice in my head that says, stupid, you've done this, you've got good things going for you. But people that have experienced heavy trauma, they don't get that voice. All they hear all the time is just, you're not good enough. You're gonna fail. And there's no voice there. So you need to be that voice that says, you are good enough. I love you. Come here. Let me give you a hug. If you ever want to talk about anything, I'm here for you. It's on your terms.
Absolutely. Yeah, that is really important. I think it's one of the points I've made. My last 16 years was working with drugs and alcohol. So it was working with people that 99% of them have got serious trauma in their life. They wouldn't be doing what they were doing. And it's trying to get to have an understanding of that and to be non-judgmental about it and allow people the space to be able to speak, allow people the opportunity to be themselves. And it's okay to, like you said, it's okay for me to be me. It's okay for you to be you, and not get too caught up. But the paradox of that is the finding, as we do in our lives, we get into conflict with people, don't we, at times? And it's
absolutely.
So when it's really then becomes really personal, or it feels really personal, it's really difficult to be objective about what's going on. It's the two sides of the brain. It's the emotional side of the brain and the logical side of the brain, and it's really difficult to separate when it's a personal issue that's going on.
Can I say something to that matter?
Yeah.
You can already tell one of my biggest problems is I interrupt people and always have something to say, and that's something that I try to deal with. But one of the reasons for that is because of my next stuff, my ADHD, whatever it is. If I don't say what I'm thinking in a certain amount of time, it will disappear. I will lose that thought, and I'm trying to get better at that, but it's very difficult. So what I've started to do is take notes. That's why I took notes when I listened to your podcast this morning. So there were things that I could highlight that I heard and, about not helping. But anyway, getting back to the conflict. What I found when I first got with my fiance is we had a discussion that I thought was very pertinent, and I don't remember what the reasons for the discussion was, but I talked about how everybody, when you meet somebody new or when you have a friend, you have a list, an unwritten list of all the things that are most important to you. And everybody's got different things on that list. For some people, and I hope it's okay that we get a little political because politics are everything. Everybody's all about politics, and this is one of the biggest things we fight. So for some people, the biggest thing on that list is not a Democrat, or in not a Tory, I think it is. I know a little bit about the UK. It's not a Democrat or not a Republican. And if that's the top of your list, in my opinion, that's a problem. Just quite frankly, because there are so much more to people. We used to have people like in the 60s and 70s and before. There used to be Democrats and Republicans drinking together, just saying, "Oh, you silly liberal Democrats," or "Oh, you heartless Republican," ha ha ha, and then they would have a drink together. It's not the end of the world. We don't have to agree on everything to respect each other and realize that we're all human beings.
I agree with. I've got friends when I go to the bar, when I go to we have ale house, what we call ale houses over here. I don't know whether you heard of those, like little pubs. And I've got one in the village where I live. And there's lots of people that have got lots of difficult political views to my own. And sometimes those subjects come up in the pub. And sometimes one or two people say, no religion, no politics. People get a bit angry. But one of the ways I deal with it is if I hear something that I don't particularly like and I don't really want to talk about, I actually just don't answer. Sometimes I think you can say everything by saying nothing.
But that's why I say the safe word. Everybody can have their own safe word. And so when conversation has reached the point where you're like, I can't participate healthily in this conversation anymore, you just say your safe word. You say inflatable tube man, or, you say, any silly safe word that just, that like you and respect you and are your friends will go, okay, well, this is really affecting him. So we should change the subject. Because it's not so important. We're not going to solve this problem. We're just having a discussion, and this is causing him enough problems to where he uses a safe word. Then the question you need to ask yourself as a person is, am I having to use the safe word all the time? That would be the next question. That would be the next follow-up. And then you have to ask yourself, do I need to challenge myself more? Am I able to exist in society? And that was the question that I recently had, was that was my depression, my quandary, because I'd been with this company for 2 years and it was great. When I joined this company, and again, this is going to be something that most people wouldn't talk about, but I don't care. We have human bodies, things happen to them. So when I joined this company, they fly us out to the location, they pay for the airfare, they pay for your hotel, they train you. They give you the computer that you need to use. It was unbelievable. It was a dream come true. And so I show up the first day for training, and then I have stomach issues, and it exacerbates my piles, as you call them, or hemorrhoids.
Yes.
It was so bad, I could not. I was stuck on the commode for 5+ hours. The next day, I was in absolute agony, 9.5 on a scale of 1 to 10 pain level. And they drove us into work, and I couldn't sit, I couldn't stand. The only thing I could do was lie down on my side. And most companies at that point would have said, well, you can't be in training, you're not going to make it. Sorry, but there's nothing we can do. But this company was so caring. The CEO overnighted me a donut from Amazon, a donut that you sit on, the little. Yeah, they brought me food. They brought me creams and pads. They brought me all this stuff. I was like, I am never leaving this company. And for 2 years, I was the top writer. I was the guy. Nobody could beat me. I loved the company. And the first year that I got my top writer, I stood up and gave a toast at this event in Vegas. It's a big company. I made good money. And luckily, now that I've lost my job, I still have some money in the bank. So That's helped, not be too depressed, luckily. But I stood up and I gave this toast and I said, to our CEO, you saved us from a different life. Because I mean, when I started working at that company, my fiance and I had just gotten out of a hole where with 3 months ago, we didn't know how we were going to pay rent. We were in really bad shape. And a year later, things were just completely different. We were able to do the things we wanted to do. The second year, we had a trip to Hawaii. It was unbelievable. I never thought I'd be able to go to Hawaii. It was amazing because of what the company gave. But then year 3 came around and just everything changed. And the company started getting more corporate. The company started getting less emotionally involved, and they basically sold their soul. They stopped being there for people, and it just started being about the bottom line. I could feel it in my heart right now, just talking about this. I can still feel the loss, because this company could have been amazing, but they were just more interested. What's that?
It is a loss, isn't it, Nick? The loss of a
Oh,
job
absolutely.
Is a bereavement, isn't it?
Absolutely. But I'm not talking about being fired. I'm talking about the third year of the company when I still worked there. I'm talking about that's the loss I feel, because I recognized after they fired me, I had already experienced the loss. And that's why I was so depressed.
Yeah.
Experienced true depression the first time in my life, in that third year. The second year leading up to the third year, obviously. But they changed the pay plan so that people wouldn't make as much money if they didn't. They always pitched, there was build a pipeline. You step up as you're at the company and you make more money. And once you hit $1 million in sales, you sell $1 million for the company, that you get paid at 8% of all the commission plus you could do the math. I mean, when you're selling deals of $5,000, $6,000, $8,000, I mean, you can make some really serious money. But after that, after a bunch of people had reached that $1 million, they took it away because they said that people weren't working hard enough. And so then they introduced a system that they pitched it for 2 years. They said work, and then you have this cushion, this nest egg, and then 2 years, and then a year and a half. I don't know the exact time, but it doesn't matter. Then later they said, oh, that cushion we told you about that you need to work towards? Yeah, that's not there anymore. And I believe that was planned the whole time. Fortunately, I believe that was planned from the start.
It's a betrayal, isn't it? Because you build your trust.
Oh, absolutely.
You're working with. There's something about certainty and uncertainty, and I think there's about experiencing both of those in our lives can be useful. But if there's too much of one or the other, it's unhealthy. Uncertainty creates a lot of anxiety, makes things difficult. As you were saying about bereaving the way the company were to who you believe they were. I mean, was there any change of personnel? Was there somebody new that came in that changed the attitude of them, or do you think
it was always the same CEO who bought me that donut and who overlooked me for the management position for the first time they were hired, and that was understandable. That's not my call. They picked a guy who was last on my list. They had 4 people on their list, and this was the guy I expected to get it the least, because he was the only one out of the 4 that was problematic. He was the issue. He was the one who had issues with having problems in the back end, having misled a client. But because he's a social butterfly, and because he just keeps the nice smile on his face the whole time, regardless of the thing, he is the guy who can say, I love you, Martin, you're a great guy, while he stabs that dagger in your back and nobody else sees it. He's that kind of guy. And that's who they look for. And now I know that. And I'll never be that guy.
Quite a sycophant.
Exactly.
Yeah. But people like it all over the world, isn't it? In all walks of life. It took me, I saw an awful lot of stuff that I wasn't happy with in my work, but it's really difficult, especially when I still had a mortgage at the time, to be able to stand up, be upstanding and call these things out, knowing full well you can lose your livelihood or actually get treated badly, get ignored by people.
Become a problem in their eyes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
it went on for years with me, and in the end, I just thought, right, okay, I got an inheritance, paid off the mortgage, and I got to the point towards the end of last year, or I just went to work one day. I thought, that's it, I've had enough. I looked at my emails, shut the laptop down, walked out to my superior and said, I don't feel very well, I'm going home. And she said, all right then. I never went back. I've made up my mind. That was done. And I'm not the only one to have done that. There were a number of other people that I worked with that have done the same thing in the past. And yeah, and I was involved with equality, diversity, inclusion as an additional side thing to my job because I really was keen to make sure that people weren't treated badly. Okay, looking after LGBTQ people, looking after Black and Asian people, looking after women, looking after about all those little specific little niches. But there's one fundamental one that they missed. It's that don't treat people badly because you decide that you don't like them for some reason, regardless of where they're from or what their origins are or what age they are or what they look like. It's just a basic
human decency.
Treat people with decency and take a chance and trust people, because if people are happy in their work and they enjoy doing their work, they're going to perform the best they can. You make them unhappy, they're going to go, fuck off, not interested.
The work is going to suffer. Ooh, I like the fact that you said that. Now I can relax a little more.
As the work I've worked in, profanity is quite a strong thing where I worked. There was quite a lot of it because, especially when you got people, you're working with people with trauma, they're just words. And if it gives somebody the opportunity to express how they feel.
Another thing people judge. Yeah. That's another thing people judge when if you curse with somebody. See, for me, if I can curse to you, I respect you, and I respect that you are an adult and that you can deal with a naughty word. It's because it's the best way to convey the emotions and something. When you say, this shit instead of this peep or this duty or this, frustration, it evokes extra feeling for everybody. It's important to use the right word to represent your feeling.
And also, it's the way the word's used as well, because, I think profanity can be used in a comedic way, which it often is, certainly over here. But you can say a word that's not particularly recognised as a bad word, but if it's used in a certain way, it's as if it's between saying fuck off and saying fuck off.
Yeah.
Or saying it with aggression. If it's said with aggression and meaning in that way, then it can be offensive to the person that's hearing it. But if it's just kind of used in a kind of a open kind of way, then why not? What's the big deal?
I love the way you guys do language over there. I love the way I love Cockney rhyming slang. I think it's fantastic. I don't I could never do it. I could never, but I love hearing it. It's so funny.
Yeah, when you want to hear some of the Scottish people with the way they use language.
I was married to a Scottish woman for 8 years.
Oh, right. Okay. So you get it right in the face, don't you?
Yes. Oh, yes. Minging and tortoise. And yep, I've heard a lot of it. That's why I knew piles. That's why I know some English and Scottish stuff. I watched Still Game, which was a great show. Very, very funny, very clever show. It's a good one. It's about two pensioners living their lives. It was played by two younger comedians. I think they were pretty popular over there. I think you can find it on on one of the streaming services, maybe Amazon or something.
Something else I want to ask you, Nick. So I generally ask this open question: what gives you peace?
It's a great question. What I've found is doing the things you love. I've found taking care of yourself and giving yourself the things that bring you joy, like finding something small. I enjoy watching a great television show or a great movie. I've always wanted to discuss the things, but people don't want to go to the level of discussion that I go to. So that's something I've had to come to grips with and something that I've had to get used to. But, just enjoying a nice beer every now and then. Don't get a Bud Light, we have over here. You guys have great beers over in the UK. But we're really experiencing a beer renaissance. And it's already happened really. It was like 10 years ago. But what my fiance has turned me on to is like sours. I don't know, you guys probably don't need, you do have sours over there?
We do. There are some sours, yeah. We have a lot of. I drink cider. I like.
Yes, cider's pretty good.
still ciders.
Right. But yeah, sours are, just they just hit you different than beer. And just drinking a nice drink or having a nice meal, instead of going to McDonald's, pay an extra $3 and go sit down somewhere and get a much better meal. Get, real ingredients. Get, like go to your what do you what's the big company over there that does all of the, oh, it's on the tip of my tongue. It's the big restaurant over there that does all the business lunches and everything. I think it starts with an A.
Oh, crikey, they're probably up in London more than they are.
Yeah, probably, because I watched some cooking shows and stuff, and I've heard them talked about a couple of times. But yeah, it's there's those nice lunch places where you could pay a few extra dollars, but just feel better later. You don't have sore stomach. You have better BMs. And it's just better for your mind, and you just enjoy it better. That to me is what peace is about doing the things that are important to you and that make you feel good.
Yeah, excellent. So how are you doing? Are you still job searching at the moment? Are you still looking for work?
I haven't even started, quite honest. I talked about it last night, but yeah, it's I'm not in that headspace yet. I'm excited about my podcast. I want to learn about podcasting. I want to, really dive into that. There's so much I need to figure out and learn, and it's scary. I never wanted to start my own business because of my autism, because of my ADHD, and so I'm enlisting help from my family, from my friends, to and asking for that help. Hey, please say no if this is not comfortable for you, but I would like, you're good at this, I would love to sit down with you. And they've all been so responsive and so helpful. And my brother, who runs his own business, he gave me some great organizing tools and everything, because that's just something that I'm really bad at, is setting the right goals and being able to have a schedule. A
Yeah.
schedule is just so imperative for me, because I will just, as you've seen just in this interview, I will just be going one way, and then I'll be like, oh, look at that. Like if you've seen the movie Up, squirrel, that's a Pixar reference.
Yeah.
But go
The
ahead.
thing about that, Nick, is that it's, as much as we might go off at tangents, it's real, isn't it? Because
Hmm.
that's what makes the conversation. Because otherwise, it can be. I struggle when I'm up to about. I've just posted my latest one today. I'm up to 12 at the moment, and I was a bit scared and a bit worried about doing it. But all the advice I'd had from people that I've spoken to is, number one, just do it, right,
Hmm.
and see what happens. Because
Hmm.
there's not a lot can go wrong really. As long as you've got a laptop and you've got a reasonable microphone and you've got a bit of software. I use Audacity to do my
Hmm.
things with it, and as I say, at the moment I'm not doing video ones at the moment. I'm just doing audio, and I might go on to video podcasts later on, see how it
Hmm.
goes. But the thing is that there was a couple of bits of advice I've had, and you may have heard this, or you may have researched it. Number one,
Hmm.
find yourself a niche, find
Hmm.
yourself something that is not too broad. Number two is podcast on a regular basis. So if that's once a week or twice a week or once a fortnight, make sure it's the same time each week. So it's like a radio show. So that once people get to know, they'll go, oh, right, all right, Martin's got a podcast coming up on Thursday at 12 o'clock. And they're more likely, as much as I put it out on social media, my hope is that eventually people will go, oh, that podcast is coming up. I wonder what he's got to say this week. And it builds. So it builds from there, working through it. Those are the sorts of things. And getting guests on is a great way of doing it, because you get fed up with the sound of your own voice after a little while.
Hmm.
And kind of go, and then we start getting all this whole kind of thing. You start getting judgmental. We start getting imposter syndrome, and thinking that no one's going to be interested in it. But just that it's a great thing is just do it. Just give it a go and work through it. Make the mistakes and then correct them as you go along. Because we can all presume what the mistakes are, but we don't know until you actually do them. And sometimes you might do something that's a bit outlandish, that is quite radical, becomes popular, becomes successful.
Hmm.
So that's what
That's
I'd I'd recommend, in the short time that I've been doing podcasts with very little experience, but with some training I've had, that's what I recommend to go for.
Well, I do want to say, I mean, I think you're taking your own advice too, because, I mean, brought me on here and, I'm nobody. I'm just some guy who, has an idea and you gave me a shot, you gave me a voice, you gave me a format, and I really appreciate that. And I absolutely respect that. And I will pay that back forward if I ever, if my podcast, can reach the level that I hope it will reach one day with my, with my understanding of what how many people need to hear this. I just hope for no other reason that people can understand that, autistic people do not try to be jerks. They're not trying to be arrogant. They're not trying anything that they do is, and I mean, and this isn't a free pass. This doesn't mean that they can, spit in your face. It doesn't, there are there are jerks and there are people that are nice people that have rough edges. I think that's the best way to put it.
I'd agree with that. I go along with that. You describe yourself that you're just a nobody. Actually, everybody's somebody.
Mhm.
Your voice is your voice is entitled to be heard as much as anybody else's. Whether that person is a famous person or not a famous person. And in many ways, I think actually hearing the opinions of ordinary people is sometimes far more interesting than might just happen to be on the TV at a given time, who runs a good TV show, or is a political commentator, or got political views, or a comedian, or whatever it might be, or musician, or all those sorts of things, or sports person. We've all got a right to be able to say something, and sometimes those things can be, if it's honest and it's open and it's real, then somehow actually the general public get interested in it.
I totally agree. And I love listening to your podcast. I love your take on things. I love your background. See, you're more clinical and you're more because that's your experience. My experience is, and it's all it has been, I mean, with sales and management and everything, it's just all in-person experience. I
Mhm.
don't have any degrees. I don't have any classes. Just I'm from from everything that I've experienced in my life, I have learned these lessons the hard way. I've made mistakes. I've lost jobs because of my big mouth, because of my inability to edit myself, because of and I did learn from that. And I think that's the most important thing, is that everybody makes mistakes, from when you're born, from when you die. Everybody makes mistakes. And the biggest mistake that you hear from old people, from the elderly, from the people that have lived a full life in their 80s and 90s and everything, is their regrets. You always hear
Mhm.
from the elderly, I should have done this, I should have done that. And, it's so flipped because the youth and the middle aged are all, oh, I better not do this because I could offend this, or I could cause this problem, or I better not do this because I could run into this problem. But, I mean, we need to realize that there's a reason that most people that have lived full lives and look back and say, I regret that, I regret I didn't do this. I should have done this better. I should have, talked to my family more. I should have done this. We have today to worry about tomorrow, but we're in right now. We need to focus on what we can do right now to make ourselves peaceful, happy, fulfilled. All of the stuff that we're talking about, the autism, the depression, all of that stuff goes into it. If you don't have that, thank your lucky stars and be grateful. Be grateful that you don't. I see people talking online about, somebody says they have depression or that they, made a mistake or something, and all these people judge them. Don't listen to those people. That's
Yeah.
what I'm finding. That's what's really helping me, is that, I believe that everybody can heal, but everybody heals at their own pace. And some people have been poisoned or, and if I can revert back a second, I think this is a really important thing. When I was talking about my years at the company, and notice I never say a name, I never say anybody's name or company or
Yeah.
anything. I don't want any kind of, liability or anything, because
Yeah.
we have to be worried about those things in this day and age.
Absolutely.
But with the company, it was, the last 6 months I was with that company, I experienced an unbelievable depression. My first true real depression where it was just a weight, just I feel it right now just thinking about it, just getting back into that headspace where I just felt like the questions that I was asking myself were, why is it so easy for everybody else to exist in this world? And why is it so difficult for me? Why do people not get me? What do I have to change about myself so that people will see me for the person that I am and recognize my abilities and recognize my talent, because I do believe I'm a fairly intelligent person. I do believe that I have great skills and good talents and abilities. I wouldn't be, a top salesperson. I wouldn't have all these awards and these accolades and have their salespeople looking up to me and asking me for help if I didn't have ability. But I just could not see the forest through the trees. And we had a company event. Long story short, we had a company event. I almost didn't want to go. They fly you out to California, for a night, and they have a big, a big banquet, and they used to give out awards. They didn't this year. Again, dropping off, becoming more corporate, becoming less, because they're getting bigger, and I understand that, but it's just another sign. But I didn't want to go, and my fiance and I talked it over. We decided we were going to go, and during that time, I had self-harm thoughts. I can remember vividly. I don't know how specific we want to get, but I thought of multiple different ways that I could end my life, and it was terrifying. And it was, looking back on it, it was understandable, but obviously never the answer, because existence is always better than non-existence. Because, I mean, let's not get into belief, but as I understand it, people that believe in heaven, if you do that, that's not something to get you there. So even if you are religious, which I am not, but to each their own, I applaud you if religion allows it helps you be a good person. Good, stay religious. If religion makes you judge people and be a bad person, maybe you should reread the text, because all religions are about loving people, are about accepting people, are about loving your brother, loving your neighbor, protecting yourself and being a good person. But basically, the long story is that when I got fired, I was depressed and upset for about 36 hours. And then again, the truth shall set you free. My fiance and I took some edibles. We drank 2 old fashions apiece. We split a 64-ounce growler of beer, unintentionally, by the way, but that's what happened. But just from the edibles and the first old fashions, and edibles are like medicine to me, in my opinion. Edibles allow me to calm my mind a little bit and be able to have clearer thoughts. I don't diverge as much when I'm on edibles. There's a limit, even 10 milligrams, a very small dosage, and these are legal edibles in the United States. But they allow me to it just calms my brain a little bit, and it allows me to have deeper thoughts. Most people, it turns their brain off. It opens my brain. And so I realized that literally this company was poison to me these last 6 months. It was poison in my veins. And I had not wanted to be there, but I was not ready to let go of what it had done for me and what it meant to me. But it was the best thing to happen to me, because it literally was killing me. And I feel such a weight lifted off my shoulders, feel so empowered and so free and so self assured. I no longer have those thoughts that I'm the problem, because I'm not. Society's rules that we have created, not laws, not, standing up in a crowded theater and shouting fire, not hurting people, but just these silly rules of how we need to act when we're out a certain place, or, what's unacceptable. If I hold my fork in this way instead of this way, I'm uncultured. People will look down on me. That is so silly. That needs to go away. We need to stop judging people and just love ourselves and worry about ourselves. Don't worry about your neighbor. Let them do it. You loved Robin Williams, I don't know if you heard his special where he talks about, getting in a German army hat, and you jump off the couch, and while singing I'm an Oscar Mayer Wiener, let's see if that does anything. If you want to do that in the privacy of your own home and you're both consenting adults, good luck. You just make sure to practice it safely. Don't hurt yourself. But
Yeah.
it's stop worrying about other people.
Great lessons to learn for each other, isn't it? And it's very much like you
Hmm.
said earlier, Nick. Sometimes when we say things and we're being heard by other people, we're giving ourselves our own advice. And I think when there's an opportunity to be heard, rather than just judging it ourselves and not quite sure whether it's right or not, by having someone else listen to it, we can then evaluate our own thoughts and then begin to come to some better conclusions.
Yeah, I want to share this the experience that I had. I want people to be able to live vicariously through me and not make the same mistake. I want people to hear what happens and be able to say, is this happening in my life? And am I connected? Because it doesn't have to be a job. It can be a person. It can be a family member. It can be an activity, drug use. It can be, any of these things that are obviously causing you the harm in your life. You need to be able to identify these things and say, why is this something that I need to put up with? Because the way it's making me feel is unacceptable. And sometimes you're not ready for that. And I mean, literally, the day before I was fired, I had a conversation with my dad, and my dad is a very straightforward person. He sold cars for like 30 plus years. And I mean, he's an amazing salesman. I'm sure I get all my sales ability from him. And he told me, he said, it sounds to me like you were done with this place a while ago. And I said, I got angry. I was like, no, I love this place, and da 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 da. And we kept going back and forth. My mom had to come out, and she was like, hey, I was visiting my parents, by the way. I don't live with my parents. I have an
Mm.
apartment.
Yeah.
But just to clarify. But my mom came out to, obviously I came over to my parents' house, who don't live far away, to, because I was upset, and they were there for me, which was great. But my mom came out and was like, we need to stop this conversation because it's not going anywhere. She could hear it was starting to escalate, and she jumped in. But after I got fired, I realized that my dad was 100% correct. I
Yeah.
was fed up with that company. I had checked out, but even then, even 24 hours earlier, I wasn't ready to hear it. And sometimes you're just not ready to hear it, and that's okay. But as
Yeah.
long as just listen to yourself, as long as you know yourself, then you're going to be in a better spot, you know? And that's what's most important, is that you're taking care of yourself, that you're respecting, like you said, listening to your body. I forget which podcast that was, but you said about, listening to the cues that your body gives you. And that was a terrific, I'm going to try to pull up my notes here real quick. I don't think I'll turn you off here. Are you still on? Allowing the body to behave as it's designed to do. It's when you gave that meditation to the women's group.
Yeah.
I loved that quote. I loved that.
Oh, so you must have heard that just because I only posted that out literally
I
about
know.
an hour or two ago.
I saw that. Yep. Yep. I had an hour to kill this morning, so I listened to a couple of your podcasts so I planned to do it last night. My fiance had something she was supposed to do, but it fell through. Also love the idea of taking courses for autism, because I don't want to get a diagnosis, because the diagnosis doesn't define me. I am my own person. And Nick, I don't need doctors saying, oh, well, you're autistic with a smattering of ADHD and Asperger's and blah, blah, blah. I don't need that. I don't want that. I don't. But taking courses and seeing, the behind the scenes of that is intriguing to me. And I think that's something that I could maybe look into. So again, I learned that from your podcast, and I thank you.
No, it's about dismantling. It's like an engine, isn't it? You dismantle an engine, then you have half a chance of working out if something's not operating in a certain way. If you know what it is that's working and whether it can be changed or not. So I think that's the point. It's like getting away from this pathology of disorders and all this sort of thing is actually just have an understanding of it. If we know how to understand it, then we know how to engage with it, even if it's different.
Yeah,
Listen,
absolutely.
This has been fantastic.
No worries. I appreciate you having me. I never even mentioned the name of my podcast once. I don't even know if it's going to stick. I haven't, I haven't trademarked it yet. I've gotten all the Twitters and everything, but I probably shouldn't say that. But yeah, I plan on making an autistic pod. That's going to be the name of my podcast. So, just an autistic guy talking autistically, talking to people about, mental health, and hopefully people find it interesting and, want to listen.
Yeah, no, that's great. I think it's a fantastic idea for doing it. I say, although there's lots of, other mental health podcasts, they can all be unique. And Nick, your podcast is going to be unique. It's going to be your perspective upon what it is to have those traits, to have those neurodivergent traits. Because it's such a broad spectrum, it may have some similarities with some people, and it may have a lot of differences with people. Speaking to you, I felt we really connected. I think we've got the same mindset. I really sense a degree of humanity with you. So I'd like to thank you very much. I think we're getting probably near to kind of wrapping this up very shortly.
Absolutely.
All right.
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate you bringing me on. I had a wonderful conversation, and I think what you're doing is great. And it's great that, you're able to be retired so you can put everything into this and you don't have to, juggle different things. And so I wish you success. I think I think you, just from the opinion of one neurodivergent person, I can say completely agree with your assessment of autism and, depression from what I've seen from myself and friends and family. And, I definitely think you're on the right path, and wish you great success, because you have a wonderful message and everyone should hear it.
Thank you, Nick. I'm wishing you well. Have a good day today.
You too, sir.
Have a peaceful time and take care.
Absolutely, Martin. It was a pleasure. All right. Cheers.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please follow, like, and share. Thank you very much. Martin, Peace Unplugged.